Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Smarter Campus podcast. Today, I am lucky enough to be joined by a member of a Boodle Leadership Council, Samantha Reeves, a public and international affairs major at Princeton University. Samantha, thank you so much for being here. If you could just tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, we can jump in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zach, for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Reeves. I am from West Point, New York, and I am a senior here at Princeton studying public and international affairs. I focus specifically on international, national security, and conflict. And as I said, I'm going into my senior year, and so really excited to be here and kind of talk about how I've seen AI develop and be used over my past 3 years at Princeton.
Amazing. I'm excited. So, Sam, sorry, if you could kind of just mention, like, how'd you get interested in AI?
Yeah, so throughout my time, I think I've really seen how AI has developed in a way that I has really amazed me. So my freshman year, I came into Princeton and I took a class on what to read and believe in the digital age. Pretty classic, just freshman seminar. And I was actually looking this year at classes for freshmen, and it's now what to read and believe in the age of AI. And so I think I've really seen how AI has been shaped in the last 3 years at Princeton. And I got interested in it just because I think people were using it more. And I was like, hey, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to use it. I was really able to see, I guess, the benefits of it and also kind of the challenges with using it. And so just kind of, I guess, the exposure to AI in the education sphere really got me interested.
Okay, cool. How would you say 3 years, right? The last 3 years, you said digital age of technology was that first year class. How would you say
Yeah.
like the perception of AI at Princeton has changed over the first 3 years, like the last 3 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely think there's more of an awareness
Okay.
that it has to be used, but I would say there's still hesitancy to use it. Um, and so I think there's a lot more classes being offered on, the ethics of AI, human and computer interactions, computing, and all of these different, I guess, topics surrounding AI. But still, if you look at the actual course policies, there hasn't been that big of a change in the actual way AI is being addressed. And so I think this has been a really interesting dynamic to me.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, how are people using it and applying it? And I guess there's just, as I said, there's an awareness that needs to be discussed, but not necessarily change in how it's being used. So,
How does that like make you feel as a student?
I've actually been discussing this a lot,
Okay.
kind of the weird conversations you have. I think a lot of us students are, I don't want to say frustrated, but there is an acknowledgement that we are going to have to use it.
Yep.
It's fundamentally shaping the way we produce academic work and how we're going to be producing professional work. And so this next generation of professionals really wants to get ahead,
Yep.
and be able to apply it in ways that will set us up for advantages in the future. And so I think sometimes the hesitancy to teach the actual usage of AI in school is annoying. Like I don't know, Zach, if you had to take like a typing class in elementary or middle school. Um, we've all been like reminiscing over these little games we used to play to learn to type. And then
Yep.
in middle school, I remember taking a class on how to do research using like a digital library catalog. But there's nothing on how to use AI. And so I think, prompts really matter if you're using various different sources and, what are the best ways, which models to use for what. None of these skills are being taught. And so I'm seeing a kind of overall frustration with how to actually apply it, especially across majors and departments. And so, like, I have a friend who does comparative literature, and someone just told her, why don't you just throw your translation into chat? And she's like, that's not how translations work. But that doesn't mean chat can't be used to do that. And so I think there's just kind of a misunderstanding of how to actually adopt and adapt it to
Yeah.
different department topics.
So that's super interesting. I like that comparative literature example. So like I'm assuming that person, right, probably has been told not to use AI at Princeton to do competitive,
Yes.
right? So like would
Yes.
you say that like the faculty members are still saying no, like don't do this?
It depends actually on the faculty.
Okay.
So like the overall Princeton policy is AI is dependent upon department and faculty in the class. And AI, if it is used, it's disclosed. It's like disclosed. So you have to say like this is what I did it for.
Yep.
But it's not necessarily a citation. And so it's kind of, I guess, just dependent on what the professors say. So I have some professors who don't allow any computers in the classroom, no technology, no AI of any sort. If you're caught, you're done for. I have other professors who just ask, please list what you put in and got out. So it's really dependent on kind of, I guess, assignments and topics.
So do you think students are still using it? You know what I mean? Like when a teacher tells you not to, do you think they are?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I like without a doubt. I think there's ways to use it. And I think it also depends on how students are using it. And
Okay.
again, this might be misunderstanding of how, AI is actually used. So a lot of the hesitancy is, hampering creative and critical thinking skills, not creating your own ideas or not performing your own analysis. But a lot of the time it's used to actually just, condense information or
Yep.
to find additional sources to connect, right? If I'm reading a 45-page long paper and I see a buzzword here and there, I might try to find the other articles that have that same word. And like, so it's kind of more so those ways I think AI is being used rather than the actual analysis part, because that is something I still think is that's the fear, I guess, of AI in education.
Okay. So you're a bit of a policy expert, I would say, right? You know a lot about that. And one thing that
I
I'm
dabble.
interested in, I dabble, yes. One thing I'm kind of interested in is like, how do you think the policy or lack thereof policy is affecting like the outcomes of students using it? If that makes sense. I can clarify.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I think you're seeing a discrepancy between students who know how to use it and who don't. Um, And I think that those who really have a good grasp of it are able to navigate these policies in ways that make their educational experience just different than those who aren't. And so you're seeing this kind of greater divide, if that makes sense, without having super clear-cut regulations on how to use it. And even at a broader, not just at the education field, but internationally, even you're seeing that as well, right? You're seeing different countries and nations have much faster, progress or innovations are occurring at different rates because of, say, either different regulations or understandings of how to circumvent those that are present.
Yeah. I mean, that's super interesting because it's like the thing that I think is happening, right? Is like when a teacher tells you not to use AI, they don't,
Yeah.
some students just don't. And then some students go use it kind of the wrong way. So there's this
Yep.
common misconception, in my opinion, that like all students are using AI to kind of cheat, right? And what you're saying is that like people just want to know how to use it. So do you think that like conversation about students are using it to cheat is kind of teaching them to use it the wrong way?
I think so. I definitely have a more optimistic view on this than I think some people do. And so I think the idea that like AI is used to cheat it's definitely used. But a lot of the time, if you actually look at the written work of a student versus AI, you can see a distinction. It's not hard to figure that out. And so I think that the idea that all students are using it to cheat is just not realistic, especially when you're in, universities and college level courses. So I think that it's more so that, I guess, narrative can be damaging to the actual usage of AI and employment of it in schools.
Okay. That's super interesting. So next I want to ask you like what is your like friend's opinion? Like do you have people that like using AI and if you have people that don't, I'm really curious to why the students wouldn't.
Yeah, I actually think most people do use it. I think that a lot of it, especially since I am in that more policy world, it's to help with our readings. When you have a couple hundred pages of reading, say in an evening, you're not going to get it done. And if you are, you're not going to really understand it without sometimes, looking at lit reviews or looking at other arguments surrounding it. And so this really does I love using Boodle to help figure out other arguments surrounding it and helping me figure out those areas in which are actually disagreements in the academic world. But you do see some people who are very against it. And
Mhm.
I think this comes into your point of this narrative that people are using it to cheat because there are examples of people cheating and there are people using it wrong. And I think that really does cause a negative connotation around it. And so just in my experience, I've seen people pop out 30-minute presentations in an hour, right? While other people are giving presentations. And so are those presentations as high of a quality? No. Can you tell is AI generated? Yes, but they are still able to do a significant amount of work in a shorter period of time, which I feel like causes a little bit of resentment. And so being able to either have better ways to mitigate that or actually hold people accountable when you do know, because it is pretty apparent when you have a slideshow of just paragraph after paragraph, paragraph of words that they don't know. So you're kind of seeing this dynamic, which is a really interesting culture.
Yeah, I mean, it is super interesting. So, have you had any faculty members that like you would say did a good job of teaching you how to use it?
I've actually never had a faculty member teach me how to use AI. Um, every usage of it is completely independent. I think the closest was when I was taking a coding class, actually, it was computer science. And so I was just taking a basic stats class with, language R. And one of my teachers actually helped me learn how to identify issues in my coding through AI. And that was the most beneficial, lesson I got. Besides that, I have never been taught really how to use it with the humanities.
What are your thoughts on that?
I am not a fan. I was talking to actually this morning an anthropology major, and she was saying she really just wished she was taught how to use it. Um, she was saying one of her friends who's computer science puts in these beautifully curated prompts and gets these amazing responses, exactly what they need, and it's really specific and really helpful, and it just allows for their work to go faster and to be pinpointed, and they're having a better understanding of what they're being taught.
Yeah.
It's like for her, she doesn't know what to put in, so she's spending half her time just typing in different prompts until one hits and gets her what she wants. And I think just introduction to how to use AI would be really, I think, really well accepted in universities.
Yeah, like why do you think that isn't happening? I guess that's like I think the interesting part of this is because it's like the thing that I like to say is I've only been alive 25 years, but I think that like this is the first time kind of where everyone started at the same point. You know what I mean? Like college professors, like most 99.9% of human beings got AI the same day when ChatGPT came out. Like
Yeah.
as a student, like how could you see that being beneficial to you if your faculty member doesn't know how to use it? I guess it's a hard question.
Yeah. So I think, that's a good question. Like it would be beneficial if the professor
So,
didn't
so
know.
kind of what I'm saying is that like it's hard to teach something you don't understand, right? And
Yes.
like especially as a Princeton professor who is probably some of the best in the whole world at knowing exactly what they know about, right? And then this new technology kind of comes in and is like, okay, now you have to teach this. Like, how would you like to learn from a professor that also doesn't know what they're doing, if that makes sense? Not that you don't know what you're doing, but as a general student, like it's a hard concept. Like, how would you like to see that go?
No, that's fair. I think it'd be even like if it was on the class level, since a lot of policies are, it'd be uh like not priorities, but kind of a professor discussing how they expect it to be used or how they have used it. And as you said, they may not know how to use it.
Yeah.
Um, but kind of just that understanding, I guess, or even because we do like each major has different workshops.
Okay.
And so I had a workshop on how to interview people, or I had a workshop on how to public speak. Why can't there be a workshop on how to use AI in public policy? I mean, if you're all going to gather 150 students into the auditorium anyways for an hour lecture on citations, I think there could be an hour lecture on AI. And so I think this is can be done in a pretty quick and easy way. I mean, you don't really need to know the intricacies of AI to teach the basics of it. And
Yeah.
I know that there's experts throughout the university. I know other students would even be willing to do this. And I think professors could actually, get something from it too. And a lot of professors do sometimes join in our workshops to learn how to either code or whatever. So like I think it is very exciting when you do have this kind of brand new technology. And with a lot of these professors, it's the realization that, you know, knowledge is changing. It's not necessarily who knows the most about a subject anymore, who's the smartest in the room. It's now who can analyze and, critically think and create new ideas off of that knowledge. We all have it at our fingertips, right? Like
Yeah.
you're able to just Google whatever. It's not really memorization or just intake of knowledge, it's the application of it. And so
Yeah.
I think professors are starting to see and realize that.
So, I mean, I think you're making just like so many good points. Like, and I think the thing that's hard, it kind of comes back to that policy point that we talked about at the beginning. It's like people don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about this because there's not like clear cut policies, kind of things like that. Like, do you feel like if you went and talked to a professor that they would be open to this conversation?
I think it would be dependent on the professor, to be honest. Um, I think it's hard when a lot of professors have been doing what they're doing for so long and who are experts. But I would say most are willing to at least consider it. And as AI is seen more in all realms and all areas of our life, I think professors will become increasingly more open to it. And so you are seeing, conversations being had about this.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of just a more, I would prefer, a faster transition, but I think it will happen. It's going to be a little bit gradual right now, as that comfortability hits, but I don't think it's something that can be ignored. It's not going to go away. So I think most
Yeah.
professors would be pretty open to at least discussing it and considering it.
Okay. So you're a senior, right? Going into the real world coming soon. Like, how have you seen AI affect that?
Yeah. It's a good question. Honestly, like I'm still in the application phase and, interviews and all that stuff. And so I've seen it even there. When I've been talking to advisors about, hey, I'm writing this application for this job, they're like, why don't you brainstorm with chat or brainstorm with whatever model they prefer? Um, or sometimes like, oh, I'm, interviewing I'm gonna go interview with this person. I throw in their name and I get a bio, right? Or I've worked in a various internship positions and it's, I need this research brief by the end of the day. Great. Okay. Let me just, throw in
Yeah.
that question or scanning the internet really fast. And so you're seeing, I think, a lot of the nuanced and pretty like tedious tasks in the professional world. So more so the like white collar job field is being changed. Um, so I don't know if you're going to have people, I'm a research assistant. And I don't know if I'm going to be needed, right? Like Perplexity is a great research assistant. I love that. It does my job half the time. Um, so I do think you're going to see shifts in kind of those like writing reports, helping schedule meetings even. So just little things like that. I'm seeing a shift in the professional world. And I definitely feel like once I'm there, I'll see it a lot more. But these have just been my glimpses.
Yeah. So, like, how does that make you feel, kind of like as a student, when you're getting told not to use it? There's no real clear cut, but then you go to your advisor and they're like, oh, why don't you use chat? Like, what is that like, I guess?
Um, it can be sometimes frustrating
Mhm.
and a little bit just like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But I do think like I get the merit and I can see the argument from the educational standpoint of, we are here to teach you how to think,
Mhm.
not to, have something to do the thinking for you. And so I do see that narrative, pressed a lot by professors. Um, and so I do think having an advisor is kind of helping you. I'm getting that part of it from, the personal development, professional development world. But I just think there needs to be a closer intersection because at the end of the day, academics are to help you set up for your next stage of life, right? Some people pursue academics and that's wonderful and that's great, but that is also a profession for those who do. And so I think you need to have this intersection between, the professional field and the educational field.
Yeah. I mean, super, super accurate, honestly. It's such an interesting kind of time to be alive, is what I like to say. And the thing I wanted to ask is like you kind of touched on, you still need to learn that critical thinking and stuff. And I would say that you are very above most human beings using AI and things like, and I know, not a ton of students are probably listening to this podcast right now. So if you were talking to an educator, like what would you tell them to explain how AI affects your critical thinking? Because I think there's a
Yeah.
common perception that like it gets rid of it when I would
Yeah.
very much push against that, but I'd love your thoughts.
No, yeah, I think what I would say is it's an understanding that's a tool
Yep.
and not the answer. It's not always correct. And so actually sometimes makes me think more because I realize it's wrong. And it's sometimes the summaries of things aren't, accurate. But it's also just not leaving. This is a tool that can actually really change the way that we are able to navigate information and, absorb information that creates more time and more space for those creative ideas, innovative thinking, and critical thinking skills to develop. And so I think it really does open up a whole new field of, instead of spending the time as technology develops, it's to make, helps with time, right? Instead of going to the library and looking through all of the catalogs and books, I can now go online and search out my book and go get it in 10 minutes. AI does something similar just on the web, right? So instead of scrolling through article after article, now I can do that faster. And so you're kind of seeing these developments over time in technology. And so I really do think it should be taught as a way to increase our, capacity to find and absorb and apply information.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. And one thing that I hear people say all the time that I'm excited to ask a student about this is like everyone's like ethical AI usage. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? People say that. It's like, what does that mean? What do you think that means?
Oh my gosh. I that is a hard question. Yeah, I've actually been dabbling this a lot
Okay.
because I think ethical AI, you have your really big extremes of, it being used in conflict. And then you have your more, you know, really nuanced biases that can be seen in prompts and how their responses are. And so I would say as a general thought, it's just kind of navigating, I guess, the responsibility of how to use AI and where it's being implemented. And so I know there's discussions, European Union just passed laws about how to apply AI. And so there's a lot of different areas of concern, face recognition and
Yep.
such. And so the ethical usage, I think it really is going to come down to how it's being applied and where. And so that definition is going to change in the conflict versus education versus, law enforcement. Like all these different areas are going to have different definitions for ethical usage and what is allowed and what's not. And so
Yeah.
I think kind of as from a big picture policy level, it's kind of narrowing down like what does that mean for education, right? Like what is ethically correct or ethically right for education? And so I don't necessarily, I would love to say this is this, and I don't really have a list. But I know it's mitigating cheating, ensuring all students have the same opportunities to use it, allowing professors to either accept it or not. And I think that's as it's getting used more, I think it's going to probably be the accept. But right now, I do think it is a valid argument for a professor to say, I don't want you to use it, just like a professor can, say, we are studying this one book and you're not allowed to use outside sources. I think that is professors do it. And that's one way of teaching a content, like teaching content. So kind of understanding that there needs to be flexibility and you can't really say this is the only way it can be done, but also have an understanding that there needs to be some sort of concept of of a safe implementation of it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And then the next question I have is like, how do you kind of stay up to date with this stuff? Like, there's so many things happening all of the time. Like, do you read blogs? Like, how do you kind of stay up on what's going on?
It's a struggle. I feel like it's changing every day. Um, Honestly, I think a lot of it's through talking to people. Um, I think AI comes up in conversation more than I'd like to say. It's a little embarrassing, um, how much we as students actually talk about it or see each other using it. And so a lot of it is kind of, just discussing it. Also, podcasts, blogs, news, even just like in class when you're browsing and doing, 5 minutes before class and you're browsing the internet and you see something, right? It's kind of just, I guess, yeah, people. A lot of it's through like hearing other students talk about it and such.
So, what are other students like? What would you say like the general use is? Like ChatGPT?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it, the general usage is just kind of helping through with content. So summaries. Actually, a lot of people I think use it now as like a Google search engine. You know how Google used to be, you type in your question.
Yep.
That's changing. It's now, AI. You throw in your questions, and that's really how I see a lot of people use it. We're looking best restaurants to eat, and I'll see buddies throw it in there. So you are seeing a shift in a usage of it on your really, day-to-day little things. So
Yeah. And would you like what platform are they using most of the time?
I think chat
Okay.
is probably, yeah, a lot
And
of,
have you seen that like change? I'm interested in that. Like, because the world
yeah.
started with ChatGPT.
I honestly haven't. A lot of students use whatever's free, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean,
So
do you
yeah,
think, okay, great point. Do you think people understand what that means? You know what I mean? Like data losing, like you're losing data, all of that stuff. Like, do you think there's any sort of understanding in that?
not really. I mean, I try to understand and I don't even fully know half the time when you say accept or not accept on, whatever terms and conditions pop up. I think a lot of students are not aware of what that actually means or the implications of it at least.
Okay. So as a public policy person, what are your thoughts on that as big companies acquire all of these free information from people.
Yeah, I think it's a little crazy when you try to conceptualize it, what's actually, the amount of information uh taken, not taken, but acquired by these companies. So I think it's from a public policy perspective, it's kind of just you need to have some sort of not a regulation, but information, something for students and users to understand. And it doesn't have to be even through the companies themselves. There's this whole camp. It's funny thinking about this, but as a kid, there's this whole DARE campaign for drugs.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, AI is like drugs, but you have this public campaign and widely accepted movement to just have a basic understanding of what it can be done. And so I think something like that with AI is not out of left field to conceptualize. Having some sort of broader movement of either whether it's a single organization or just people publishing, hey, what does it mean for your data to be used? Like, what data is being used? Where is it going? These just kind of brief conversations that aren't being had could really be impactful for a broader, just understanding of what this means.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. I'm gonna steal your dare comparison. It's like because there's nothing. You know what I mean? There's like not
It's not.
one thing that explains to you what's going on. And it's literally kind of my job to know a lot about this. And it's so hard. Like you have to sift through so many weeds to figure anything out about kind of what's actually going on. But that's a whole other conversation to be had. Wrap it up on time here. Last
Yeah.
question. I asked two last questions to everybody. If you could snap your fingers and change one thing about your education, what would you change after your fingers were snapped? I know it's a big
Oh,
question.
that's a good question. I think I would say to that I wish there would be less of a fear of AI in education and more so of we discussed this previously, but an understanding and teaching of how to use it. The hesitancy, I understand it and it's valid, and I'm hesitant myself, but I only think you're going to surpass that boundary by having a better understanding of what you're actually doing and using. So,
Okay. Super
yeah,
cool. And then last one, what's your favorite way to use AI outside of school?
outside of
Like I
school.
use it for
Ooh.
cooking all of the time.
Honestly, I love it for titles and names. So like anytime I need a team name, AI, or you're making up like you're having an event or something, it's like, what's this, instead of your traditional back to school bash, what's my event name gonna be? So it's been really fun just kind of, you know, using it for those purposes.
Okay. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being here. Everyone listening, I will have Sam's information in the bio of the LinkedIn post and the YouTube video and the Apple thing, all of the places that it's posted. But Sam, any lasting thoughts for people listening to this?
Not really, just get out there, learn about it, use it. It's amazing, and I think it's gonna be here. So let's start going.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.